Hey friends, it's RSKT, and in today's video I wanted to try something a little bit different. I've always been a really big fan of creative technology. I love finding a new piece of software or gear that's able to help me sort of propel my workflow into a whole new direction or make a job that was once really tedious somewhat easy. And throughout my years of browsing the internet, I've definitely come across my fair share of applications that I just sort of keep coming back to. So in today's video, I kind of wanted to compile a list of some really useful apps that I think could serve creative people such as yourselves. Now, if I wanted to go down the list of every single app that I've used, we'd be here all day. But I've kind of cherry-picked a few that I think would really sort of gel well with each other and would probably appeal to people within my audience. Now, granted, I know that a lot of my channel has focused on digital illustration and animation up until this point. But there's definitely room to incorporate that with digital photography. So a lot of these apps that I'm going to list today sort of relate more to the photography field than anything else. But at the end of the day, it's still creative software that can be used for image editing. And I think that there might be something in here for at least one of you. So let's kick off the list and get started with apps from Topaz Labs. Topaz Labs is a software developer that sort of aims to give you sharper, clearer, and overall better image quality for your images and videos. Now, all of their applications are paid, but if you want to try them out, you can get a free trial. They've got things that help you enhance and upscale video resolution, as well as image resolution. They have denoising tools that allow you to remove the noise or grain that you might get in an overly dark image, and it does a much better job than apps like Affinity Photo and Photoshop. They've got a bunch of other tools for things like masking and sort of like weird filter studio effects that I don't really go for that much. But the main reason that I wanted to give these guys a special mention is because of their Gigapixel app. Gigapixel lets you upscale an image like 4 or 8 times the size without losing image quality. Now, granted, it is using AI to do this, so sometimes it might incorporate something that wasn't there before. Hair might look slightly off, the eyes might look slightly different. It all depends on what image you're using and the quality of that image. I thought it might be really useful for people who are taking their illustrations and trying to get them printed on things like blankets or big signs or posters or something that they need to scale up. Because at the end of the day, like, you can sort of increase the document resolution in Photoshop, but you're always going to wind up with a lot of pixelated artifacts and whatnot. So using something like this can sort of help smooth things out and just make the whole process a lot easier. If you think that this is something that might appeal to you, definitely go and check it out. I think that it's really useful, but yeah, go and check it out, see what you think. So coming in at number 2, the next tool on our list is actually quite similar to Gigapixel in a lot of ways, and that's Remini. I don't know how to pronounce it. But it's basically an app that does something similar, and specifically with faces. Remini kind of came out as a mobile app at first, and there was no way to use it on a computer. It had a lot of really cool features, and basically it upscales your image, but it tries to recreate faces. So if you have a fairly decent quality image to start with, the face is really, really good. Everything is sharp. You'll get much more detail in like eyebrows and eyelashes and teeth and nose and all of that. If your image is really low quality though, and you try this out, you might find that it actually winds up looking like a completely different person. And that's kind of because it's kind of just guessing its way through that. It's not exactly maximizing the image. It's kind of doing that, but trying to throw sharper versions of eyes and nose and mouth on top that closely resemble what it started with. Now, fortunately, you can now use Remini on a desktop computer. It's just hosted through a website, and I'll make sure that I leave a link below to all of these in the video description. Weirdly though, there's a lot of features that are kind of absent. So when I first tried out this app like a couple of years ago, it had things for upscaling video. It let you have a lot more control over just how much image resolution there was. There were a lot of really cool things that it did. And now they seem to have stripped all of that back down to sort of its main selling point and put that up on the website as well. So this does cost. You can get a 7-day free trial, and after that I think it's like $4.99 a month subscription. But I'm yet to find something that can enhance faces as well as this can. I think Gigapixel does a better job with everyday objects, you know, grass and fences or whatever, but Remini does a much better job with faces. So if you're smart and you have some photo editing skills, you might be able to enhance the image in both of those and then merge them back together in Photoshop or Affinity Photo later on. Either way, it's definitely an app that I think is worth checking out. It's super useful if you get jobs that are after image restoration, like old war photographs and maybe even old film photographs. It just helps you see your pictures in a completely different light, and it's really awesome. Coming in at the third on the list, we have Luminar AI. Now, this one's actually pretty cool. It does a lot of pretty basic stuff, but together it does it really easily and lets you do a lot. It's really special for being able to completely change the overall look and tone of a photograph. You can replace the sky, and if there's water in the image, it will reflect that sky onto the water. You have a lot of creative control over what sky you see. Maybe you want birds and different elements. You can adjust a lot of the same things that you would get in Photoshop. And I think that's sort of the weird part. This app can pretty much just simplifies things that are easily done in Photoshop and Affinity Photo. I think that you get a lot more creative control doing it the old-fashioned way, but things like this are sort of coming out of the woodwork all over the place at the moment, and they're really streamlining the whole photo editing experience. A lot of people kind of hate that, and I can see why, but if you have a lot of work coming in from clients and you need to get through something really, really quick, it's a surefire way to go. Now, just quick mention, this is also a paid app, but if you head over to their website, they have a really well put together website that sort of lets you animate your way through it and kind of see how all of this stuff works before you even bother to install it. The main reason that I wanted to mention Luminar though is because they at the moment have a beta for Luminar Neo that's coming out. Now this is going to be really game changing. It's projecting the depth of your images and allowing you to edit them that way. So being able to change the focal point of images kind of at the click of a button and adding in extra elements and things like that. This is stuff that Photoshop seems to be starting to incorporate with a lot of their AI tools and the neural networks feature tab, but not everybody has access to that. So a one-stop shop to an application such as this could sort of save you quite a lot of money and give you like a lot of new creative ideas to explore. Now there are kind of a lot of other apps like this. I think Luminar is kind of doing it the best at the moment, but there's also applications that you might want to check out like Colorcinch. Colorcinch just sort of throws in like filters and different overlay effects on top of your images. It's not really doing a great deal of AI stuff, but if you're one of those people that kind of likes to see what their image is going to look like as a cartoon or something like that, you might find that useful. So I'll leave a link to Colorcinch down below in the description as well, but I'm kind of leaving it here because of an app that I'm going to mention a little bit later in this video. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about Volumax. Volumax is an After Effects plugin. So for those who haven't really tried After Effects before, I mean, you could definitely give this a go, but this might sort of go over your head a little bit. Either way, I think it's a really cool plugin. It basically allows you to create depth maps of your images, but inside of After Effects, and then animate the camera and different effects around that. So this is actually super useful. I've used this on several video projects in the past when I needed some extra B-roll and I didn't have any. Basically, you just have a still image and then you slice it up so that you can sort of project the different elements further back. You have a lot of control over how that effect is used. And then you can throw in things like dust, maybe floating in the air or on your lens. You can do it to faces or items. It's really awesome, and essentially you're making video content out of still images. Now, if you sort of throw this in the middle of a video and just whiz by it really quickly, no one's going to notice, and it's actually really awesome. Now, this one does cost, but it's relatively cheap for what it gives you, and even though there are a few other After Effects plugins like that, I'm yet to see another program that just addresses this need so simply. But moving to the next item, we have something that relatively does the same thing. You just don't have a lot of control over it. So this is called 3D Photo Inpainting. It's a GitHub project that you can download for free and check out. Now, if you don't really know what GitHub is or much about sort of compiling these sort of programs, you're probably going to have a little bit of a hard time installing it. However, there are lots of videos out there that can show you how to do it, and if there's really a big enough call for it, maybe I'll do something like that on my channel. Just know that I'm not a software developer or actually much of a computer nerd either, and even I was able to figure out how to install it. Basically though, it just does the same thing as the last plugin that we talked about. It allows you to upload an image, and then it does some depth projection, and then basically exports the full video files that are kind of having the camera spin around in different ways and giving you a 3D photo effect. I would compare this kind of to the quality that you see in those Facebook 3D photos that some people seem to use. It's nothing special, but the fact that there are some software developers out there trying to sort of bring this further into the forefront, I thought was worth mentioning. Now we have a really cool one here called ArtBreeder. ArtBreeder is a free website that you can sign up to, and it does all sorts of things. You can generate people, characters, landscapes. There's a lot of different sliders. Understanding how it works would take a whole video in and of itself for me to explain, but that's not really the point of why I'm mentioning this here. I wanted to bring this up because sometimes when you are having sort of a creative block and maybe you need some new reference material, I think that ArtBreeder is just perfect for that. Let's say you wanted to create a new fantasy scene and you're trying out different thumbnails for landscapes and you're not exactly sure which direction to head in. A few minutes in ArtBreeder is going to give you more ideas than looking through any book is going to give you. And it's all just generated by artificial intelligence. So you could take that and then start building on that idea from there. This is really, really cool technology, and it seems to be picking up a lot of traction lately. So I thought it would be worth mentioning in this video. So next on the list is one of my favorite apps, and that is EbSynth. EbSynth is free, and I've actually been using it for quite a while, mainly just for experimentation. However, I did use it just a little bit on a really psychedelic music video I made for myself on my second channel. I was trying to simulate really sort of realistic psychedelic effects, and it helped me achieve some of that. So I'll leave a link to that down below so you can check it out if you want, but honestly, just go down the Google rabbit hole of EbSynth. People are finding tons of really cool use cases for it. Essentially, what it allows you to do is split your video into separate PNGs per frame, and then you just paint over one of those to act as a keyframe, and it will apply that painting to the rest of the video and compile it for you. So you can basically make the look of a painting come to life, or more so make a video look like a painting. But that's kind of not the only use case it has. I wouldn't exactly call it a great deep faking technology, but you can easily change the color of people's hair. If you have a black and white 2D animation you've been working on and can't be bothered coloring it in, EbSynth can take care of it for you. I've seen a few really talented artists out there are making super basic models in Blender, animating them slightly, and instead of spending all of the time of texturing and lighting and rendering, they're basically just painting a single frame in Photoshop, plugging it into EbSynth, and they have this really unique looking piece of art left at the end. There's also a lot of awesome videos out there of people taking old Disney animations, even Rick and Morty animations, and adding things like texture or highlight and shadows just to sort of make them look a lot more realistic. I think it's a really awesome piece of software, and if you haven't checked it out already, definitely do. You won't regret it. Now moving on to something really weird and uncanny. I've only just recently found out about this one, and I managed to give it a try out today, and it's pretty strange. So's the name too. It's called ChunkmMogrify. So ChunkmMogrify is another GitHub project, so it does take a little bit of effort to install, but it's actually relatively straightforward. Either way, once you have it open, you're able to import an image of a face and then start the process of changing it. So essentially you mask out an area like the eyes or the nose, the mouth, the hair, whatever you want, and ChunkmMogrify will do its best to find image data that matches the style of your photograph. After a few steps, you can blend it in pretty seamlessly, And then you can start applying modifiers. You might want to make a person smile or have their eyes look left and right. You could add glasses. You could take away or add in their facial hair. You could give them an entirely different haircut, age them, change their eye color. The list goes on and on and on. Now, it's not the smoothest app. It does take quite a lot of processing power for this to work. So some of the footage that I'll be playing over the top of this is sped up slightly. But at the end of the day, you get a fairly decent looking outlook. And then if you take something like that over to Affinity Photo and use the Inpainter tool, you can paint out a lot of the weird artifacts you're left over with and basically get an entirely new image of a person. Now, the result that I'm going to have on screen, which I played around with today, is going to look pretty far away from the original, and that's because I pushed it really hard. But, you know, if somebody was looking the wrong way in an image and you needed them looking a different way, I feel like this does a much better job than the AI in Photoshop that claims to let you do the same thing. I'll be keeping my eye on this one for updates just to see how it develops. But yeah, definitely worth checking out if it's something that you're into. All right, and that kind of brings us to the last two that I'm gonna sort of chuck into one as kind of like an honorable mentions. These are mobile apps though. So you either need to do them on your mobile phone or you need to download a piece of software like BlueStacks, which basically lets you emulate an Android phone on your computer. That's what I'll be playing over the top of this. So the first app I wanted to show is FaceApp. Now I didn't pay for the full version of this, so there's a lot of features that I'm skipping over here. But FaceApp is pretty unique. It allows you to make people smile, change their age, their hair color and style. Pretty much change a lot of things about them. You can give them glasses and add in backgrounds and everything. Now, you know, again, a lot of this stuff can be done in Photoshop, and there do seem to be a lot of apps popping up on the mobile side of things that are sort of allowing streamlined photo editing. And I think that's just because there's a lot more money in doing something like that. But you know, FaceApp I would say is definitely one of the better ones that's doing this. Yes, it's a monthly subscription, but if it's something that you're into and maybe you can't afford things like Photoshop or Affinity Designer, this could be a really good gateway into doing some basic photo editing. And then the last one on the list is Perfect Me, which I have somewhat mixed feelings about. I know that photo editing is a thing and people are always trying to make themselves sort of look better and more beautiful, and it kind of goes against nearly every grain in my body because I feel like you should just be content with who you are. But nonetheless, Perfect Me kind of builds on the Liquify tool from Photoshop, but in kind of a much better way. You can control sort of how your jaw looks, your eyebrows, your eyes, your smile, and then even take it a step further and start working on the body. You can change your height, the height of your legs, the width of your hips, increase breast size. You can give yourself abs or like a more defined clavicle. The list goes on and on and on. Now, you know, I could see like a lot of Instagram influencers kind of really getting behind this and liking it. And I think that's what it's for, you know, like it's to help those people sort of make the best images and not have their images look so edited. But I really wanted to mention it because you can kind of do this stuff in Photoshop, but it takes a lot longer. And in my opinion, is a lot more work than using something like this. So I thought it worth mentioning here. And that pretty much brings us to the end of the list. So maybe these tools aren't exactly related to things I've been uploading on my channel up until now, but I think if you're a creative person, and I can almost guarantee if you're watching my channel, you are a creative person, then I would say that find a way to make these tools work for your art and for your photography, or for both. See which tools work really well together and which ones you can mix. I already mentioned EbSynth. Something like Colorcinch could be used to quickly cartoonify your image and then use that as the keyframe of EbSynth. And it's just going to make the whole painting process of it really easy. Something like ArtBreeder could help you develop a somewhat realistic looking face, and then you might want to throw it into ChunkmMogrify and edit it even further before incorporating it into a really big art piece that you're doing in Affinity Photo or something. So definitely have a look at these and play around with them if you're so inclined. See how you can make them work together and come up with something cool and creative. I know I do a lot, and I just thought that I'd make a video on it. So I hope that this video has been helpful to people. I'm going to stop rambling now. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next one.